Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Screenshare. Super excited about today. Q4 and Q5 are some of the trickiest, most intense times of year for anybody selling anything online, whether you have an app or e-com company. We've got an incredible group for you today. I'm going to dive right in. So I'm John. I'm from Ready Set. We make video ads for paid social and beyond for brands like DoorDash, Robinhood, Hims and Hers, and others. We've got Josh from our team, who's an amazing creative strategist who's done some of our top performing ads to talk about the creative side of things. We've got Austin Helm from ZeroBounce. If email deliverability has ever come up in a Slack or a meeting and you and your team are wondering why you're not getting the response that you think you ought to be getting, Q5 and Q4 are a really important time of year to get that right. It's still only October. We still have time. And Austin's here to educate us on what you all can be thinking about and doing. And then Jana Griffin from AB Tasty. You've got landing pages for your products. You've got a homepage that probably hasn't been touched in months. And then you hear about personalization all the time, and you ought to be doing that. When I was at Airbnb, we had a long time where we realized we had not changed our landing pages, and it took months to build a new one. Jana's at AB Tasty, where they dive into exactly the subject and enable it. I promise all of you listening, this will not be a pitch. My goal and all of our goal is to share our screens, share our knowledge, and educate in each of these areas as we head into this intense period of time. I want to start with you, Jana. In the context of landing pages, A/B testing, is there a time of year to do that and not do it? And then just start with like the lowest hanging fruit. There's a lot of people out here that have 83 things on their priority list. Like, when does testing and optimization start getting into the top 10?
Yeah, and thank you so much for inviting us to this webinar. We're excited to talk with all of you about how to get closer to your customer. And John, you put me in a bad spot here. When should we be testing? I mean, it's all the time, right? And in today's conversation, what we're going to dive into, along with Josh and Austin, is how we can leverage Q5 in particular. So with our over 1,000 clients right now, as they're heading into Black Friday, the busiest time, they're facing code freezes, lots of traffic. This is the perfect time to test and to get those learnings that are going to push you into Q5, into Q1 with your personalizations. So I would say all the time, right now in particular, we're very ripe. And then you asked John about landing pages, right? Josh is going to talk about taking advantage of lower cost of ads during Q5. And what I'm going to be sharing with you is, okay, great, you are taking advantage of that, but when they click on that ad and they go to your landing page, is that example or is that experience consistent? So I'm happy to show an example now if you'd like it, or we can pop around and you can introduce the
rest. Let's pop around and come back to it. I am very excited about that as well. I call that continuing the scent. It's like we've all had the experience of seeing a piece of creative, Josh, right? And you get to the landing page and you're like, this couch that I was trying to buy, I don't even see, where this is or how this relates. And that's always a bad thing. Yeah. Talk to us about creative, Josh. How ought people to be thinking about this as we approach sort of this spike in ad costs at Christmas and then this like dropping off a cliff December 26th?
Yeah, sure. So, John, totally. I think that there's it really depends on your product category, right? So for some product categories, you're going to be like, for example, most consumer product categories, you're going to have a huge spike during Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and a little bit into holiday. And then you're going to have a huge dip afterwards. So it's about finding ways to get customers to come back to you and purchase. So it's thinking about what promotions you can run, how you can entice customers. It's also a great time to start educating your customers about products again, using UGC and sales sequences and different formats like that. Leveraging platforms like TikTok, where education is a really key thing. So
yeah,
Yeah, depending on that. But there are some product categories. I just do want to stress this because I'm in this space right now of the health category. There are some spaces where Q5 is actually just as expensive as Q4, and Q1 is just as expensive as Q4. So for some people, depending on your product category or where you're selling, you might want to actually just continue on your trend of keeping CPAs as low as possible by doubling down on what works, et cetera, et cetera. So, but yeah,
Gotcha.
like you were saying, I think landing page, the whole customer journey is super important, and it starts with creative. So
And it does, and that's a good point. That it depends on the category, right? Like mobile gaming. I used to be in the mobile gaming space. Q5 is huge because generally CPMs are down, and that's when everyone dives in. They turn things off in the lead up to the holidays. Whereas obviously, if you're selling something that's giftable, which is not every e-commerce product, then Q4 is really important to you. I was going to ask you a similar question, Austin, around email, sort of the when question. I assume in your case, the answer is also you always want to be optimizing for deliverability. And I assume you want to do so well in advance if you can of these high times of year, or is there any kind of sort of seasonality or when in your world?
Yes, good to be here, guys. Thanks for having us. So to answer your question, John, you absolutely do want to be constantly keeping up with the maintenance of your email database, because everybody can work as hard as you want on all this creative stuff, all the content. You put a lot of time and effort into that. But if you can't get from point A to B, then none of it really even matters. So making sure that your list is clean and the emails that you have are actually valid is going to be one of the most important fundamental things that you do. In terms of timing, the average lifespan of an email is anywhere between 3 and 6 months. 3 months for B2B emails, 6 months on the higher end for B2C emails. So that'll give you a little bit of an idea of when you want to start planning based on the type of emails that you have. Ideally, though, before the holidays, you really want to get going around July, August, just to make sure that you have your feet underneath you. But the good news is that if you haven't done it, you still have some time. You can get everything cleaned up. It's a short process. It doesn't take long to get those emails cleaned. But you do absolutely want to make sure that all of your contacts are where they need to be. They're all valid, so that with the amount of sending that you're going to be doing before the holidays and before Q5, you're going to be good to go.
It's amazing that it's such a short lifespan. What do you know why it's so much shorter than, I assume, the average tenure of a person at a company is more than 3 months, right? For B2B, and then B2C. I mean, I've had the same email for 10 years. Why is it not more reflective of those things?
That's a good question. So if you think about it, I mean, I know me personally, I have the same Gmail I've had since high school, probably. It hasn't changed. So just generally speaking, those emails, people tend to latch onto those emails and keep them much longer than they will one of their business emails, because people don't, people get a job. They have that job for a certain amount of time. Jobs change, employees change, domains change. There's a bunch of different things that factor into why that lifespan is much different. But people tend to cling on to their personal emails. I don't know what the case is with you guys, but I know I've personally had mine for a while now. So that tends to be why there's such a discrepancy between the lifespan of a business email versus a consumer email.
Gotcha. Jana, I wanted to jump into the ninja level of personalization, and please share any screens you have on this. I say ninja level because, again, I feel like, I will speak for myself. I feel like getting to a place where you are building multiple landing pages and testing religiously. I know people who are like, of course, that's part of my daily job as a growth leader. And I know a lot of people, and I've been in this boat, that haven't done it in a long time. And, as a friend of mine says, your homepage is not your landing page. So personalization is next level and feels complicated and hard. What is sort of the simplest with you guys or otherwise, just what's the simplest ways you can personalize, and what does that mean?
Yeah, let's let's start with the basics and make it bite-sized so that everybody on this call can be like, oh yeah, I can do that. That's not a problem. So yeah, let me share my screen and talk through this just a little bit here. And it ties into what Austin's sharing about clean emails, right? Because when a customer comes to your site, we know that 90% of them don't identify themselves, and we all want them to identify themselves. We want them to give us their email address, right? Because we know that 85% of people who are on a website don't really enjoy the online shopping experience. And so we ask them, what can we do to be better?
And Jana, if you could hit view and just make this a full screen.
Oh yeah, for sure. Sorry about that. Here we go.
That way.
There we go. Does that give you what you're looking for?
Boom. Thank you.
Beautiful. So when we ask them, what can we do to help you have a better online shopping experience? They say, please personalize. Please reward my brand loyalty. Please send me emails that show me the content I'm looking for. But let's talk about a bite-sized example of what does this mean? And Josh would love your feedback on this as well, and as it relates to your work, because super simple. You put your ad on Instagram, you put your ad on Facebook, somebody clicks on that ad, they go to the landing page, and the product looks completely different because your photography has changed. Your colors are different, right? This is a very simple personalization that you can do based on where they're coming from. Make sure that your variation, your landing page, that image is exactly the same. It reduces bounce, it increases conversions. But I don't know, Josh, how does this align with what you're talking about with creatives?
Yeah, so personalization in landing pages is everything for us, because if you're personalizing on landing pages, that makes our jobs so much easier. We can tailor, we can work together with clients and people using personalization to make ads that are targeted specifically at specific groups. And I've seen this in tons of different brands. There's a brand.
My favorite, Josh, is the why 30-year-old men are trying this new something. You know, it's like, I'm a 31, but that's, you know, whatever. I'm not 31.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, it just makes it so much easier. And then if you go to a landing page that has like an article that says like why 30-year-old men are, you know, X, with a very clear call to action, place where you can make purchase, it just makes the experience so much more personal for each person. And it helps you build, and this all works together. Like what we're doing on the creative side, what Austin's doing on the email side, and what Jana's doing on the landing page side all works together. And if you don't mind, Jana, I would love to share something that I've put together. Believe it or not, I was a graphic designer, and this is going to be the least graphic presentation I think I've ever shared. But the way that I think of creative in terms of when you're building up your audience and you have low CPMs is it's like a sponge, right? So you are using UGC and sales sequences and educational content to fill your sponge filled with water. And then what you're going to be doing is email and SMS, like on Austin's end, and retargeting on our end to the extent that it still exists with post-iOS 14 world. And you're going to wring out that sponge at like opportune times. So maybe you do a Mother's Day sale later on during the year. Maybe you do some other promotion in the spring. You have sales and promotions. You have social proof. Using dynamic product carousels is a great way to wring out that sponge, because you've already educated the customer about the product and told them why they need it through UGC or through sales sequences.
I'm a big believer in this too. It's like you can fit the whole funnel in a Facebook ad. There's this traditional world out there that says you have to run TV commercials and then boop, boop, boop. And then all Facebook's good for is converting. I don't believe that. We've helped build whole companies that paid social is like 90% of their spend, right? Absolutely.
So it's like, and I know that there are different numbers out there. I read one that like 75% of marketing budgets now upwards are digital marketing, like between paid
Past
social,
traditional
paid
TV
search.
a couple years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like gone, it's really like it's gone the other way, right? It used to be the other way. So, but yeah, email and SMS, and then unique customer journeys. Just thinking about, some like I had a client at one time that sold cosmetics, and we did a lot of advertising for them through TikTok, and they had a metric. They were doing a program with Sephora and Ulta to track where they heard about their specific products, and they found that most people were finding out about their products on TikTok.
Yeah.
So
TikTok's often under attributed, and then when people do fancy stuff like that, they'll find out it's actually mattering.
Exactly. So different e-commerce brands have different goals. They have different ways of reaching customers and very unique customer journeys. So just keeping all of that in mind.
I like the sponge. I like also the one someone said to me once. It's like, the high funnel, mid funnel education, waving outside gets people in the room. If you don't have anyone in the room to talk to and sell something, then you could stand there and yap all day long and nothing's going to happen. Jana, I want you to go back to what you were sharing and kind of take us into the hopefully non-scary world of how to personalize.
Yeah, we can. Well, that was definitely non-scary, I think. And Josh, thanks for also making it feel real. This is something that anybody can do. I do want to dive into more of the ninja aspect of it. Please. And maybe bring in Austin back into this conversation as well. So two things. One, let's still keep it basic here. And Austin would love your input into this as well. But often in emails, if you have a clean email list, you'll have a promo code in that email, right? So great, awesome. I'm a huge fan of MeUndies. I'm getting my email personalized to me. I click to get that code. Hopefully the email actually got to me. Well, then I get to your website. I kind of forget why I was there. I don't see the code. I'm not reminded. Again, another key area to personalize. You take a banner and you use whatever solution you have on hand to you to quickly spin up that banner and have it follow me throughout my journey saying, hey, don't forget about this code. Direct correlation to making sure that you are optimizing what you're spending on ads and getting a return on that investment.
I feel like this keeps happened to me multiple times lately, if this is what you're talking about, where I get some offer or discount or thing, and then it's like, oh, but you got to log into that platform.
Totally.
Okay, here's the login. Okay, we send you a code to your phone. Yeah, here I am.
You're
I get there.
Yeah.
That offer's long gone, and I don't know where to go to find it, and I just leave.
Correct. Yeah. And we've all had that disappointing experience where you think that the code has followed you and you check out and you realize you just got charged way more than you expected, right?
Exactly.
So this is just another simple way. But Austin, I don't know, like, how does this tie into for you making sure that these email lists are clean?
Yep. So just to chime in here on why it's important to have valid emails during this process, because a lot of what you're describing is automated, right? These emails are being fired out with codes. People input their information with whether it be on forms or purchases or what have you. These emails get fired out. But if these emails are valid and all these emails are being sent and the email's invalid, you can start to have bounces. And those bounces that you're getting as those automated emails are being sent out can do damage to your sender's reputation and are going to affect your ability to deliver to those to any email within your whole domain when you go about sending. So ensuring that you have a process in place to make sure that the emails are clean can really, really help to improve your effectiveness and your deliverability and just getting to the inbox in general to make sure they get these codes, they get everything they need, they get all the marketing materials. Actually, if I could share my screen here for a second.
And while you do that, Austin, like demystify this for us a little bit. How big a problem is this, right? There are going to be people watching this that have never cleaned their email list in years, and their emails seem to be going through quote unquote fine. How do you know how big a problem it is? How do you know if you're getting dinged by the email platforms and how much?
Yeah, so let me share my screen here.
Mhm.
So you guys can see this here. Just to give you an idea of how big of an issue this is, here's just a basic stat on emails in general. So we validated over 7 billion emails the last year or something like that in that amount of time. Only 57% of all 7 plus billion that we validated were actually valid or deliverable emails, with other ones being invalid or other different types of categories.
And these were real 7 billion. These were like from your customers, like real.
Yes, this is real. This is our data. This is not like some type of
Right.
internet Google data. This is what we actually saw. So you can see here though, basically only 50-60% of the emails are actually valid. So that gives you an idea. And we validate across the entire spectrum of industry, whether it's retail or any type of consumer goods. We validate for legal, in the legal world, pretty much banks or organizations, tech companies, everything. So across the spectrum, there's just a lot of bad data out there. People don't like to give their real data unless they really want a product or something like that, or they really want an offer. You can really kind of expect that you might not come across something that's going to be legitimate. Everybody that's listening to this, I'm sure, has at some point filled in a form or done something with an email that's not exactly valid, just so they don't get all
They're completely made up, or like I know my wife and I both have like an old email from like 25 years ago that you put all that junk to,
Right. Exactly. That's something that's detectable as well, whether it's a secondary email of a person versus the primary one they use. It can all be tied together now. But as you can see here, it's very important to just make sure that you have the real email address. So one way that's super effective to do that, especially with this type of process where a lot of people are going to be filling out forms, is actually through using validation within your forms. So if I share this other,
I think if I'm guessing what you're about to show, it always annoys me when they do that, because I'm trying to put my fake email and they're like, no, I don't think that's real.
Yeah.
Or like, actually, we're going to send something to you. Is that cool? Sometimes it says that after I've put in the fake one. I'm like, caught.
Yes. So you can do it through like two-factor, where you're sending them an email, they have to confirm and all that. But honestly, that's going to inhibit the customer experience. And then because it's just more headache. They have to go to their email, click through the email, come back to your site. And that a little bit amount of time. I mean, again, I'm sure everybody can relate. You'll just be like, you know what? Forget it. I don't feel like doing this. I'm not going to worry about it. Yeah. So one way you can do it is actually through the form itself. Here on the screen, I have a sample form with the email validation engine behind it, where you can validate the email on the fly so that you know as the business whether or not the person is giving you a valid email or an invalid email at the gate. And then you can decide what you want to do with the email. And then as the consumer, if you're giving them an invalid email, they can let you know right away that they know you're giving you an invalid email. And so you're not going to even get through to go ahead and make a purchase or do whatever it is you want to do.
Right. What does that usually look like, Austin? Like, it seems like an awkward encounter. So I haven't had that hit before. I've had the like sort of coincidental, oh, what's your email? Okay, great. Now we're going to go validate by sending you one. This is like next level for me. This is very cool, where you're saying with this API on my form, the moment they type it in, or at least by the time they hit submit, if I know it's not valid, like what do people say? Like, oh, it looks like you're lying.
So it depends. It depends on what kind of service you're offering, because if it's something like that's a little bit more involved, they might be more direct and say, hey, we know this is an invalid email. Like if it's a business checking out another B2B service, that's when you'll really see like they'll shut you down so that people don't get through to get all that information.
They don't want junk. It's not worth it to them. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So in retail, really what it is you can take that information, but let the person go through to do whatever they're going to do, because they still may make a purchase. But you then know, because you have the status of that email, okay, we're not going to send this material to them. We're not going to send, blast this automated stuff to them that's going to potentially do damage to our reputation and inhibit our ability to send later on. So really, you have that discretion as to how you want to handle it and what you want to do. If you want to be as direct as possible and say, hey, we know you're lying, by all means, you have the ability to do so. But up to you as to how you would like to have that
I didn't think
handled.
of that. That's a nice passive way to be like, okay, great. Thanks for that great email. And then you just tell your system, don't even try to email
Yes.
this one. But that goes back to my probably unanswerable question, but you probably get asked frequently, which is there any way to divine sort of how your domain is being treated? Like for those folks that answered the poll in this webinar of, I have not cleaned my email list in a very long time, how much are they getting hurt? I mean, I saw your stats on like, well, a lot of that's probably not going through. Fine. I guess I'm asking more of the reputation with Google, for example. Like we had a lot of struggles with this a few years ago where we were sending a lot of cold outbound and it was going well. And then all of a sudden it wasn't. And then it kind of was. And we could not figure out what they thought of us. Like when people ask you about that, is there any way to answer or sort of try to figure out what your, I don't know, domain, like reputation is?
Yes. So actually, everybody's specialty here really ties into the answer to this question. So number one, the thing that's going to affect you is, are you bouncing emails? Are you going to spam? Are you doing things that just is annoying people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, or that you shouldn't be doing? Because in Josh's realm, they have to design things and do things that the things like Google are going to pick up on and see like, okay, this looks like legitimate content. This is not going to be spammy. Josh, actually, I don't know if you want to chime in here and things you can specifically do or look for to kind of make sure that your content is going to appear well to Google as well. Also, too, what a lot of people will do is they'll have different domain strategies. Like if they have a domain they really want to protect, whether it's like your main domain, your .com domain, let's say, they'll get the whole package and they'll get the .net and the .org, and they'll do different sending from different versions of the domain. So it still has the branding there, but they don't want to risk doing any sort of damage. So they'll do some of the automation sending from the .net or the .org, so that they're not doing anything to the .com, because a lot of the professional communication is done with the .com.
So it's transactional emails. Yeah. And I do want to come to the creative, Josh, but lastly, as a best practice, Austin, if I've got a sort of young company and I've not really like launched hard into email yet, is it a best practice to like go set up a .net or a something my brand name you know what I mean? I've heard of that practice before. Is that a best practice that most
I would definitely say that's the best practice. You want that backup, because let's say you do start with your .com, just in the event that something happens, you're kind of, up the creek without a paddle. There's nothing you can really do. You have to start over entirely. And especially from a branding perspective, that can be tough to overcome, because your mail is coming, your domain is a big part of your brand. So protecting that from the beginning, and especially it's usually very cheap when you are getting started with domains, unless you're purchasing some major domains, but most people getting started aren't. So just do what you have to do to protect that, and have a strategy there in place. Generally the strategy is, if you're sending the good emails and you're doing a lot of personal communication, the .com is the best. If it's a lot of automation and stuff where it's a lot of volume emails, maybe use one of the other domains that you don't mind.
Yeah, that makes sense. And last thing real quick on this, and we'll go to creative. I learned this recently. I guess there's a distinction between transactional emails, and you can tag emails as such, if I understand it correctly, and marketing emails. Obviously with Q4 coming up, Q5, there's a lot of transactional emails. Your thing has shipped, etc. I just learned this. Like, how should people be thinking about those two things? What domain they go through, tagging them, etc.
Yeah. The domain thing, this is where that domain strategy would really come into play. Make sure you're not using your .com for transactional stuff. Use a different domain or something.
Oh, use a different domain for I would have thought the transactional stuff is the useful, your product is shipped stuff, but you're saying actually that should go elsewhere.
Yes. Yeah. Because it's not your main communication. Like, it's not your outreach. It's not your like brand. It's not something that like you're putting your presentation in front of somebody for your brand or anything like that. So if you're just getting like transactions back and forth, a branded subdomain should be totally fine.
And when you say subdomain, is it like it's like literally a part of your domain, or it's literally like some other name?
It can be. Well, it can be, but also like just changing the .com, the extension, the extension.
.org,
.net. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
something
Josh,
like that.
talk to us about creative. So again, we're hurtling towards this intense time period. A lot of folks are kind of like burning out on ideas. I feel like, they've been spent all year trying to find what works. Do you have anything fresh for us? What would you advise?
Yeah. So I'm going to share my screen here. I have a visual that can kind of give you a sense of how to shape creative concepts in a thoughtful way. So here we have a Venn diagram of what makes a great creative concept. So at the top, we have our customer, right? We always think about our customer first, who we're selling this product to. And that's really important. And going back to the personalization theme that we've been talking about this whole seminar, it's really important if you're personalizing creative, you're thinking about who you're selling to specifically. So, if you have a product that's aimed at men, well, what kind of men? What kind of men like your product? Is it millennial men? Is it Gen Z men? Are they urban? Are they ex-urban? Are they suburban? You can even dial it down that far if you want to, but it's always important to think about who you're selling to. And then you have your product or your what. This could also be your offer. So if you have a Black Friday, Cyber Monday offer, or you're thinking about shipping cutoff before Christmas, that can be the basis of your promotion. But it's the product of what you're selling, and then your angle. Why would somebody need this product? And the reason why, like your Black Friday or Cyber Monday promotion might not be your angle is because you're still trying to sell to that specific customer, right? You're still trying to reach them. So making sure that you have an angle, like the why your specific customer wants to purchase this. Why do they need this product? Why would they want this product?
Sorry to interrupt, Josh. I feel like most people don't get over that hump to that point. When they're building ads, because it's hard. You're really talking about empathizing with the customer, putting yourself in their shoes. And it's just so easy to fall into but I just saw this 3 reasons why ad that did well for my competitor. I'll just do that. Stop, talk to customers, put yourself in their shoes if you're not one yourself, and really ask yourself, what do they care about actually? And why would they buy this? And then the creative's easy from there.
Yeah, totally. And John, that takes sometimes doing consumer research. It takes talking to your customers. I've done that before. I've reached out to customers and interviewed them and asked them hey, why was the reason you purchased this specific product? What
or if you're that's talking to customers is the ultimate, go cut and paste 40 reviews and throw them into ChatGPT.
Exactly.
What's the common theme here? What do people talk about most? What is the value they're getting? And what's the emotion behind it? AI is a very good tool for pulling this kind of thing out of a lot of information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And even within certain, if you have hunches, a lot of review sections on websites have searchability. You can search specific things. So, hey, I think maybe a reason why a customer would like this is because of X. You can type X into search and literally all the reviews featuring that theme will come up. And then, like you said, copy and paste it into ChatGPT and ask it for very specific scenarios to dial down okay, here are 5 really awesome, very specific angles for this particular customer type.
Specific angles, absolutely. And even, steal language from the reviews. Talking the way the actual customers talk is so much more resonant than addy copy,
Oh, totally. We actually had an example of this with one of our recent, with one of our clients, John. We did an ad where, so the brands that I work in are in men's health. And generally speaking, for men's health, your best bet is to be very straightforward with how you're presenting the information. And I decided hey, I actually want to make this ad it's a young man talking about it, And so I presented that idea to the team. The team came back with a great script and we did it. And the ad absolutely took off and is really successful in the account. So yeah, I think that's super key, talking to customers they actually talk about the product.
By the way, if anyone is in marketing watching this and you want a promotion before Christmas, do this. Go talk to 10 customers of the products without being asked, record all of them on Zoom, put all of the text files into ChatGPT, and pull out, top quotes and insights and themes and send it to your boss. And like, I half joke about the promotion, but it's just because it's so valuable. And I have found that you do 3 of those and, you have screenshots of the people and you've got pullouts and maybe you find those insights and you make a little supercut and cap cut. I mean, even the CEO is going to be like, probably the CEO has not talked to 10 customers over the last 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just every time so loaded with insights of like, oh, did you see that? Oh yeah, he said that. So it's just amazing. Jana, maybe I have terrible retention, which I do, but did you go fully into the Ninja personalization? Because I really want to learn about that. I feel like we keep ejecting from your deck.
Well, this is fantastic because all 3 of y'all have been dancing around how to be a ninja. We talked with Austin about, and with you about feeling uncomfortable giving the correct email address. That's one type of buyer, right? But then we're also talking with Josh about young men when they go to a website. Do they want it to be straightforward and just get to the point? And what this circles down to is that every buying decision that you make is based on emotion. And then we back it up with a logical decision behind it. So this is a great example, gets it across right away. Half of your buyers are going to be emotional. They want to connect to the image that they're seeing. They want to tell a story, be a part of it. Other half is going to be rational. They just want the product. They're going to be that straightforward visitor. John, you're giving these great examples of using qualitative insights, talking to your customer, and then using ChatGPT for some analysis. That's a great start. What if, though, we can actually use AI to say, this is actually who your audience is and how they're feeling, and you need to create a personalized experience based on that emotion. So let me just give you an example of what this could look like.
Yeah.
Simple example, we're all working on this. Do we post reviews? Do we not post reviews? If you can use AI to segment your audience to say, this type of audience loves reviews, they will convert more quickly with reviews. This other type of audience segment, based on their emotional needs, they actually don't like reviews. It detracts from their experience. Then you create 2 different scenarios. For one PDP, PLP, you hide the reviews. The other one, you show them. And you show that to your 2 different audience segments. If they need competition, they want to be the best, yes, then they want to see those reviews. Show it to them. If they're immediate, they're like, just get me to the checkout, please. I already know I love it. Take away those reviews. Give them the experience that they need. So this is that ninja level status of using AI to analyze your website and segment your audience.
I remember a big A/B test that worked at Airbnb, and it was actually in the Facebook ad creative, was the button saying book now, which it had said for years, versus learn more.
Sure.
And learn more, which is, you can do 100 of these tests. And, as you probably know, half of them or a lot more of them will not be statistically significant, but it was very clear that people were more comfortable clicking learn more. I don't know. This was like 5-7 years ago. Maybe people were scared if they hit book now, it would book it. It just felt like an easier way to like, all right, let me go learn more. Social proof here, a good example of something that definitely works probably for a lot of segments better. Any kind of like, not to put you on the spot, but do you have 2 or 3 things that you see over and over again, segment specific or broadly, that people aren't doing on their landing pages, let's say for e-commerce, that often improve conversion?
Yeah, well, again, it really goes back to if you understand your customer. So I think Josh's example is a great place to start. He talked to the buyer and is able to understand and apply that to your ad and to your content. If you don't understand the buyer, then when you optimize that landing page, it's going to hit the mark. I bet you, and I would love to hear from the audience today, like, what test have you run or personalization and you were stoked about it, but then it just had a neutral impact on conversions.
I feel like that's most of them for for people. It's the same with creative ads on Facebook. It's like, oh, this one's definitely going to work and this one's not, and you're wrong about 50% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, only 10% of the tests you run will be successful. That seems like soul wrenching, right? Especially when you put so much energy into the creatives. But I just want to drill into this emotional segmentation, because we have found, let me just pull up a quick report.
Yeah.
We have found this was a test of removing price from the CTA. We're like, when do we display price? Do we put it on the the PLP? When do we actually show the price? So we hid the price on the CTA. The test was neutral, didn't help with our personalization efforts. But then we use this AI engine to understand, okay, which segments responded well on this experience.
I think I'm just making for everyone reading this right. So all people that went to the site, pretty neutral. The next row is intuitives, a segment of people. The next row, rationals, is a segment of people. And
correct. And you can see that the more emotional segment of the audience, they loved it. They ate it up. They didn't want to see the price right away. They were still engaged with your story. The rationals, they were like, nope, I already know. I need the price. I need to get to the checkout. And so when you hid the price for them, horrible experience for them.
How did you know who were the rationals and who were the intuitives arriving at the website?
Yeah, so this is all based on 8 years of research into purchasing behavior modeling. And we've looked at over 100 million online interactions. And based on tons of data points, within 30 seconds of hitting a site, we can segment your audience into 10 different emotional segments. We can audit your website to see who is responding best to your experience and identify where you're missing out on conversions. So you definitely need assistance. This is not qualitative talking to your user. You need an AI model to help.
But I'm probably not the only one wondering, like, how does all that experience and all those hundreds of millions, like, how do you determine? It sounds like you've got sort of a stock group of 10 or so key emotional segments, like the two that you have here. I imagine, is it that you sort of have a bunch of, data on a bunch of folks going around the internet and you kind of see how their shopping behavior is, or where are you getting this to give these segments kind of credibility?
Yeah. So think about when you physically go into a store, your facial expression, how many bags you're carrying, who you're with. There's so many data points that the salesperson can pick up on you as you walk through the door and create a beautiful experience for you based on that. Online, we don't have that luxury. So what are we looking at? We're looking at how are you moving your mouse? Where are you clicking? Wow. How fast are you scrolling? What extensions do you have in your browser? What browser are you even using? Mm-hmm. All of these little points that make up you as an online shopper, boom.
Intuitives are more Safari, rationals are more Microsoft.
There you go. Yeah, we'll just lay that out there. Let the audience fight about that.
That's so fascinating. That's so interesting. Speaking of the audience, before I forget, Austin, Lisa in our audience asked, and I'm still kind of stuck on this too, not to, again, scratch the surface too hard, but like the average life of an email is 6 months. What do you mean by that? Particularly after you validated kind of my gut too, which is that most of us keep our emails way, way longer than 6 months. What do you mean by that, to answer Lisa's question? And why is it so short?
So what I mean by that is that email is literally just out of use. It's not a valid email anymore. People don't use it. And the thing is, this is on average, right? There's more emails that are used for transitive type things than there are emails that people like actually latch onto and hold onto. And because there's so much transition and turmoil within that segment of it, it definitely skews the data for the other group, the stuff that people actually hold on to. But the reality is these are all mixed together when you have a list. Right. So you have to validate to sift through them all and see what's going on with each of those things. And that's just typically what we see with all those different types of emails. So
that makes sense to me. It's like the transient ones get shoved in there just as much, if not, more so, because again, people are not giving their real emails for stuff. So I could totally believe that stat. And it's kind of impactful to me, because it's like, geez, like half this audience has not updated or cleaned their email list rather in a long, long time. So there's a lot of value there.
Usually a good cadence, like at least 2 or 3 times a year, you're good if you clean up your list. Some people do it quarterly. The people that really freak out do it like every month. That's overkill in my opinion, but that's what some people like to do just because they have a churn like that. So as long as you're just keeping up with the maintenance of the database, you don't need to worry about anything else from a deliverability perspective, because you shouldn't be getting any sort of bad results or anything. There's really nothing that can do damage like getting bounces and delivering to spam. So keeping up with this one simple thing is really going to alleviate and eliminate a lot of the future problems you could potentially have.
That's awesome. I think it's an easy thing for people to do. As we get closer to this intense, end of year period, do you have any other pro tips? I know you guys don't do like the content side as much as sort of the back-endy deliverability side, but in addition to just the hygiene, cleaning the list with a product like yours, I don't know, the way you ask for emails, when you ask, like Josh or someone was saying earlier, it is important this time of year because, as you get people to come to your website and you're spending all this money in this big quarters, you're at the very least, hopefully capturing an email. Yeah. Anything around how you capture or anything else that we haven't talked about here, Austin, that people ought to mind?
Yep. So obviously everybody does paid social nowadays, and they're using their social media and these strategies to ultimately get to the email. Getting the email is like you have formed the real relationship with somebody. The analogy I kind of like to use, it's like social media. If you get somebody's social media, it's like you got invited to their house and they can sit on the couch or, do like the basic guest things. When you get their email, it's like, okay, now you can go and you're comfortable enough to go and open their fridge or something like that. Like it's just a much more intimate relationship once you have somebody's email and you're communicating with them that way. And so in terms of how to get the email, getting them to a landing page or having a very good user experience from a form perspective, just the basic components of a website or any sort of digital interface, doing that well and putting a lot of focus and energy into that flow and that logic is going to ultimately determine how effective you are in getting that data. It's got to look professional. It's got to feel smooth. There can't be hurdles, minimal amounts of clicks. Just really dialing in that process and how you're going to access that data is going to be great. And then a lot of times now too, especially on websites, people are offering promotions right away just for giving them your email, because that email is so valuable. They're giving up some money to get that data, and that can work. It's a great strategy. I know I've been doing some shopping and things. They offer me the 10-15%. Fine, I'll give you my email if you wanna give me a discount right away. No big deal. But that's how important it is to get these emails. Companies are willing to give up that a little bit of money, basically paying you for your data so that they can market to you and do those types of things.
100%. I've seen those promotions as well. Speaking of personalization, Jana, I wonder, Austin, like it's rare and it's more in the B2B space, but I will go to a page or I'll get an email and it's like, hey, we see you're from readyset.co. I imagine there's even ways that you could pre-populate, like, enter your email and it already says at readyset.co. So I just have to type 4 letters, John. Any sort of best practices? Or I feel like those things bubble up, but I don't see them sort of taking over yet.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't come across. I don't know if I've come across something that makes it that easy to.
It should, because you've probably gone to a website before and it said, "We know you're from this company." Have you ever seen that?
Yeah. I've seen those types of things. It's really like the easier you can make it for somebody to give you their data, the easier it's going to be to get the data. So
how about Jana, the on the continuum of creepy to helpful, like that kind of personalization? Have you guys played around with that? With like, hey, John, looks like you're into these cargo shorts,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just ran a test with one of our clients that was trying to understand. They already had like at Gmail or at whatever populated, but then they wanted to take that a step further with the information they already had on their clients. And so testing these different ways to make that email form fill just less clicks, the better, generally speaking, but always test it, because you don't know. You might be dealing with a demographic where that is too creepy and they're running for the running for the hills. No thanks. But when you're working with Gen Alpha, Gen Z, yes, please don't make me click on anything.
So I get you on the optimizing the get to the email as easy as you can. Do people test personalization down to I think there are ways that are sort of online where you can get a first name or you can get a domain. Have you guys found anything about putting that right there on that person's experience?
Yes, and you have to do that in conjunction with how much first-party data you have on your client, right? So I would imagine that a majority of us on this call don't have a rich CDP with all of this data that they can leverage. So yes, ideal state, and yes, to test it to understand how that white glove treatment resonates with your audience.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like if I go to Chase Bank or something, they have my name and I just assume, whereas most people don't have a huge amount of first party data. What I'm referring to, that's just super new, and we'll all watch it together, but is this trend towards, I think it's retention.com and a few other sites where they can tell you the email and the person and the domain even when they're completely new to the site, which apparently is above board. I don't know. Still learning about it. Awesome. Well, we've got 5 or 10 minutes left. Anyone who has any questions, please throw them in the chat.
John, I do have one thing to add on the email thing. So a lot of companies e-commerce companies will say, we want to do lead generation. And my opinion is, rather than doing lead generation campaigns, unless you're selling solar panels, for example, we've had a client like that. Your best bet is to run conversion campaigns and have a landing page with an awesome email sign up, because those customers you're getting on conversion campaigns are primed to purchase. And so those leads are a lot more valuable than the leads that you would get on a lead generation campaign. And to Austin's point, once you have their email and their phone number, they go from being a potential customer that you have to acquire to being an owned audience. So you actually own that audience now, and you can recapture them on email or SMS. So just wanted to add that, throw that in there in that conversation.
Yeah, and I saw there was a question on the chat about SMS. I think probably none of us are SMS experts. I think it's a terrific channel. I don't mind getting texts from brands, but anything else that has not come up in any of your worlds that you want to make sure we get across?
I mean, it sounds like we're opening it up to questions, but I would love to hear the struggles that our audience is having with personalization, with testing, and especially as they think about Q5, this mid-December, January, slower time that actually is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, it's so funny, right, Jana? Because it's slow for most people in e-com that are have something giftable, that are going crazy leading up to December 25th. And then there's a whole world, including healthcare, right? Josh, that's, our clients chill out and let all the Christmas people take over, holiday people leading up until that. And then it all hits December 26th. I used to be in the mobile gaming acquisition space, and it's a huge deal, Q5. So definitely an interesting time of year. How about testing, Josh, when it comes to creative? Is there a right time to do that? Should people be testing in Q4, Q5, whenever their hot time is, or well in advance, ideally?
Generally speaking, when you have low CPAs or high ROAS times, depending on what you're measuring for, that's generally the good time to test, because it's, you're working off a blended basis. Usually in creative, you've got your creatives, that work. And so in your testing campaigns, you're running those higher risk creatives. So yeah, generally speaking, if you're in Q5 and your CPAs are lower or your ROAS is higher at that time, it's probably a good time to, start testing. I actually have some visuals I can share with you really quick on Thumbstop. Thumbstop is a great
more
thing.
Screen sharing, the more better on Screenshare.
Yeah, exactly. Oops. Where is it? Okay. So, so you can see here, these are some examples of Thumbstop. So Thumbstop is the first 3 seconds of your ad over total impressions. And And what you're going for is you're going for people to stop on the ad. So you're using different methods. So we have 3 different things here. So captivating visuals. So you can see here, this is for a wellness app. And you can see, well, now you can see into the future. We have this really cool looking like crystal ball feature. You can do camera tricks and headlines. This is for a health brand here in the middle. So you can see they're using a myth and fact framework here in the opening headline or super, and using the camera trick to kind of like zoom in on her face as the myth is going on. So it's like interacting together. And then communicating relatable feelings. You can see here this guy is scrolling. This is for a fintech brand that we have here at Ready Set. And you can see here, he's really unsure about the website that he's looking at. And so,
I mean, what's jumping out at me is just the weirdness or the oddly satisfyingness of the one of those electrical balls on the left.
Oh yeah. That's probably
the
the most classically thumb stop image.
Yeah, I mean, the goal of all these hooks, right, is that it's just different than everything else, and particularly the left and the right are. And then don't underestimate the middle. People want to learn something. That this is a very timeless hook that works, which is myth. X, especially if people are looking at X and think, wait, I thought that too. It's very hard not to want to know what's going to say next.
Yeah. So these are just some examples of things that you can test in your account to see if they work. If you're in a low CPA time or high ROAS time, depending on what you're optimizing for. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Well, lastly, I want to go around. If everyone could give me one as lightweight as possible, as well under an hour as possible. I think you all have offered so much value and so many good ideas of what people ought to be doing. And we all know that we're all going to jump off of this in a few minutes and have, 83 Slacks and a million other priorities. What is something, starting with you, Austin, that in under an hour, ideally, somebody could block out on their calendar, take care of, and add a lot more than an hour's value to their company?
Yes. Validate your email list, especially if you have a low volume of emails. It can take 10 to 20 minutes to do. Get the list cleaned, make sure you have good emails, and that's going to take care of a lot of the problems that you could potentially face, a lot of the scary things that you hear out there.
And ZeroBounce or otherwise, what's the rough cost to this thing? People are wondering, okay, I do this 20 minutes for $2,000 or $20 or what?
So if you have 2,000 emails, for example, it's $18. 10,000 emails is around $65. So it's super cheap. It's cheap too. It's not like it's going to cost you an arm and a leg to do, especially with the risk to not doing it and then the results you get from doing it. So easy to make happen from a cost perspective and from a time perspective.
And are most of these one-off things, like are you guys or others in your space subscription, you got to pay for a year, or is it just you pay $65 once and you're done?
So it depends. You can do the one-off, you can do the bulk purchase and get it done that way, or you can do the monthly subscription, which is great if you are using real-time validation on your forms, because as the new leads come in, you get more credits that you can use to validate. As
that was a very cool demo. If I got 10,000 emails, how much is that roughly a month in your space?
Yeah, around 60, $65, $70. Something around there.
Pretty cool deal for pretty cool, valuable tech. How about you, Jana?
So I would just encourage everyone, as you're going into this Q4 Black Friday and then wrapping up with Q5, make sure that your banners across your site are very clear on your shipping and return policies. And a lot of our clients are leveraging our solution to make sure that those banners are working well and that they're measuring the metrics they need and that they're testing those banners ahead of time. If you don't have that luxury, just be very clear. It's just critical that you're building brand trust during the holiday season.
That's great advice. How about you, Josh? What's one thing people should do?
Yeah, I would look at your historical data from past Q5s, determine what your Q5 looks like. Do you have lower CPAs or higher CPAs? And then have clear goals as to what you want. If you want to keep costs down as much as possible, make sure you're optimizing creatives to your lower CPA creatives. If you want to educate and fill your sponge like we talked about, do that. And if you have lower CPAs and ROAS, it is a good time to test. So if that's the case, come up with some awesome creative tests that you can throw into your account, and then with very clear learning outcomes, and then make those creatives and throw them in the account and see what happens.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you don't know what you're trying to learn, then you probably won't learn it. So definitely set that up in advance. Thank each of you. This has been awesome. So yes, A/B Tasty for testing your site and your landing pages, ZeroBounce for cleaning your email list. That's just no wonder you guys are getting really big. It just sounds like such an easy, obvious value. I love how simple it is, Austin. And if you're looking to scale up your ads, on Facebook, on Snapchat, on TikTok, we are at ReadySet, which is just readyset.co. Awesome. Thank you all for joining. Thank you, panel.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure.
Take care, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.